Hello, it's Mr. Junior here, back again with more Gran Turismo Sport and a new entry into the series which I like to call Discussions about GT Sport. Now, this episode is going to be about the visual enhancements that can be made to the game. Whether it be about aesthetic or subtle game features, all of these improvements are related to things that you can see in the game and what would make the game more visually appealing. So first up we have light and dark menu options. Now, Gran Turismo 5 through Sport have introduced a darker theme to the menu options, yet in Gran Turismo 4 there was a general lightness to it. It was more white than black. In the newer games it's more black than white, and it would be very simple to just change the colors around in a general sense and have a light option for the people who like the GT4 aesthetic, and then a dark option for the people who like the 5, 6, and original Sport option. Is this an option where I think Polyphony Digital will add it very soon? No, I don't think so, but could they implement it? I think quite easily. It's not exactly hard to change the colors of a layout. I mean, we saw in the original release for Gran Turismo Sport, we saw in the press release version early on, probably about 4 months before the game was released, that it did have a white, lighter option, and that was kind of interesting, kind of cool, but then they went with the darker option, which I think was better, but having the option once again, how many times I've said option, having the option once again would be very nice to have. Now onto a point where many more people will agree on, and this is a feature which I think will definitely be added in the coming months of GT Sports development. This is the rain. Now, as people have probably noticed in the tire options for car setups, you can choose snow, dirt, and rain slicks. Now, the dirt option is quite obvious. They have Fisherman's Ranch and others. But those snow and rain tires are very indicative of things to come. Why would you have snow tires in a game that doesn't have snow? I mean, if you had a winter theme with a dirt track, then I guess you could have snow, but there's no winter theme. There's no seasons. There's nothing like that. Which leads me to believe that Polyphony Digital will be adding rain and rain effects. The reason why I think they have not added it yet is because Polyphony Digital has set their standards very, very high with GT Sport. They have set their standards of 60 frames per second all the time. No drops whatsoever. Normal PlayStation or the PlayStation Pro. There are no frame rate drops in this game. And they want to keep that, and rain is a very, very GPU intensive addition to any game. For instance, Forza Motorsport 7. That game runs horribly on the PC, absolutely atrociously, especially when there's rain on the track. Now, a game like Project Cars 2 or Project Cars are very nicely optimized for PC, and PlayStation, and Xbox. They run generally very well. They won't usually drop below 50 frames per second, and that's if they drop, because that was a main feature of the games instead of just being tacked on as an afterthought, kind of like in Forza. So I think Gran Turismo Sport and Polyphony Digital, they are making sure that whenever it rains, that they're going to perform some magic in development that makes it so that the frame rate does not drop below 60. And that's going to be very tough, but once they get it done, they will have figured it out and they'll probably be the best in the entire business. But that is something that everyone wants. You ask any person what is one of the top 5 things that you want to be added to GT Sport, and nearly everyone will say either nighttime or rain. Now, on to nighttime. That is another especially controversial thing to talk about with GT Sport, because in GT Sport there are night times on a couple tracks, but there aren't that many. And even whenever it is nighttime, it's still pretty much dusk or dawn which really is confusing to me in particular, because whenever I say I want a night for a game, I want nighttime, it means the only thing that's guiding me is the moon, the stars, and whatever lights the tracks have provided me. In GT Sport, that is on the Nürburgring. Mainly, I'm talking about and referring to the Nordschleife, because it has periodic uh, lights around the track, but it's still enough to be challenging. Now, nighttime in the entire series should be a standard, because that's a very possible time for people to race in. So why not have it? Once again, I think it's mainly due to development issues, frame rate drops, etc., which I don't know why they haven't implemented it, considering that on Mount Panorama, or Bathurst, the nighttime is beautiful. I love it. I love how it looks. I just wish that there was more of that in the game. But that's not really the biggest problem for me. It's just a visual enhancement that would be very nice and would give credentials to the game, being a next gen being a next gen console racer of this high of prestige. You should have nighttime in your game. That's just without saying. Now here is the biggest downside of this game. The largest thing that anyone who was anyone, even people who weren't anyone and were just nobodies, everyone was talking about this specific thing in GT Sport. The lack thereof, and it was the lack of time progression in the game. Whenever its competitors, such as Forza Motorsport 7, however badly optimized it is, it still has this. Project Cars 2, even game that came definitely years before GT Sport, Project Cars, the original, and even a game back in 2005, no, not 2005, more like 2007, GTR2 had a full day-night cycle. And what confuses me the most about this game is the fact that this is the last nail in the coffin for the game, and for Polyphony Digital, is time progression was in not only Gran Turismo 5, but it was also in Gran Turismo 6. Both of those games had dynamic weather and dynamic time progression, which means that it wasn't just the same stars going overhead every single night. It changed slightly. And I can understand on the PlayStation 3 having those frame rate issues like the game did have back then, which is one of the reasons why I think Kaz and Polyphony Digital are working so hard to avoid that this time around. But still, that was a PlayStation 3. The PlayStation 4 is up to 5 times as powerful as the PlayStation 3, considering that it can run 4K, and 4K at sometimes 60 frames per second whenever you're talking about the replays in Gran Turismo Sport. So it's not like the hardware isn't good enough to have these day-night cycles. Project Cars 2 runs on it, runs perfectly fine, and Project Cars 2 runs with not only dynamic time progression, but also dynamic weather. It can change from snowing to raining to clear to a thunderstorm. In all the matter of about a lap or two, you can even have that. So there is no reason why GT Sport should lack time progression. Weather progression, I understand, because they really do want it to be at 60 FPS all the time, and Project Cars 2 does not run at 60 FPS all the time. It runs at mostly 45 to 55 frames per second. But still, you need to have time progression, especially in 2018, whenever this video is being made, and 2017, whenever the game was released, because there was Project Cars 2 released 2 months before not before Project Cars, but before GT Sport. And I don't know, it's just something that I'm really passionate about with this in particular. I love time progression. I love watching the sun set, the sun rise. I love going from nighttime to daytime and watching the headlights of the cars turn on and the running lights turn off. It's just so amazing for me, and especially because nighttime can give you a completely new perspective on a track that you thought you had down to the wire. Say, the Nordschleife, for instance. The Nordschleife, in the daytime, I've memorized it nearly completely. I hate the track, but I want to beat it, so I try and be as fast as possible on it with a controller. And I've gotten it down pretty well in nearly every sim that I can play. But as soon as I switch to nighttime, even in GT Sport, you can't see where you're going. You are flying completely blind. And in a game like Project Cars, forget about having any lights whatsoever. You will not see anything, and you have to really know the track in order to race it. So, I love time progression. I know many people do. That was one sticking point for this game that really had people in knots. And as long as Polyphony Digital is looking to implement this, I'm fine. As long as they're working on it, that's okay. If they're not working on it at all and don't plan to, we're gonna have a problem, because that would be depriving the most beautiful game, almost of all time, definitely in the PlayStation 4 era, of time progression and all that comes with it. I don't know. I just love time progression, and I don't know why it doesn't have this. That's why it's on the list. Now on to a lighter subject, and this is a feature that I really miss from GT4 in particular. I don't personally know if this was in 5 or in 6, but I know it was in 4, and I know it definitely added some level to the game. And most people don't think about this, but it's the background of the showroom. What is a showroom supposed to be? It is supposed to be something that adds the ambiance of the car. If the showroom is bright lights and white and all of this, it's supposed to be a car that is shown off in a very light scenario. If it's very dark, very gray and black, then it's supposed to be a car that's very sleek, and it's supposed to be in the night, and that's whenever it's the most beautiful. And Gran Turismo Sport has this lacking a bit because they mostly opt for a black background. Now, don't get me wrong, the showroom is greatly improved over previous titles. It does a lot of analytics. It shows you the width and the length and the height of the car. It shows you all of the specs for it. But I feel as though there's something missing, because in the dealership, which is what it is, it's brand central, it tells you that you can buy a Samba bus along with an Audi. It doesn't make sense. Why can you buy cars that they're not selling anymore? They don't sell the Samba bus. That isn't something that is in Volkswagen's current lineup. At least no one is telling me if it is or not, but older cars are not supposed to be in a dealership. They're supposed to be in a showroom. And what Gran Turismo 4 got perfect was they had the new cars and the classic cars. So they had one section for new, one section for classic. The new one was white or gray, and the classic was red. It was a nice deep red near the very back and a bright red near the front. So it looks like a museum. It looks like something where you would be, oh, that old car looks so nice in this light. It looks as if it's supposed to be important. And that would be very nice to return. I would very much so like the differentiation between new cars that you can buy and classic cars. I understand the separation between the showroom cars and the Vision GT cars, even though I'd much rather have those integrated together, because I don't really see too much of a reason to have them different, but I definitely see a reason to have the classics in a different section than the new cars to get. So that would be a very nice addition, and I think Polyphony could add it because, once again, it's just color tweaking. You don't have to do anything with how the car moves or anything like that. You just have to change the color of the background and then separate them into a different area. This is something that bugged me, not initially, but as I got farther into the game and acquired more vehicles and more vehicles that I thought could be clumped together. So, say I wanted to, on Monza, Italian track, I wanted to have all the generations of Lamborghini together, an Italian company. I can't do that because there are more than 3 cars in that lineup, and you can't boil it down to 3 cars because you'll be missing out on one. And that's very upsetting to me that you can only place 3 cars in a certain scene. I understand why, because on the old PlayStation 4, the processing power for that isn't particularly high. But on the PlayStation 4 Pro, there's no reason not to have it. The Pro has more processing power. So why not give people who have the higher horsepower machine to give them more cars available in a scene? That would be really cool, wouldn't it? You have, say, an entire Le Mans setup. I mean, not an entire one, because I don't think 40 cars fitting in one space would be that accomplishable, but more than 3. Definitely less than 10, but more than 3. Maybe 5 or 6. Because if you have if it looks like a whole lineup of GT3 cars, that's about 4 or 5 vehicles, including the pace car. So, why not? Why not have that? It's really intriguing to me why they didn't upgrade that for the Pro. Why they didn't upgrade so many little tiny things that would just push people to get the Pro a little bit more than the normal PlayStation. Because in VR, there's a slight difference, but many people aren't going to pay $200 and $250 for a VR headset. And the only thing that's really improved other than that is the textures, the ability to have it at 4K, which is not an extremely huge deal to many people. 4K systems still cost quite a bit of money compared to HD. They're not ultra expensive, but they're not cheap like HD is now. So you need to have things on the Pro that the PS4 cannot do, and one of them could be adding more vehicles. So, why not? This is a feature that I think I have overlooked until now in a game like Project Cars 2, especially Project Cars 2, where in the middle of a race you can pause the game, and immediately go into a photo mode, where you can take a picture of the car in action. You don't have to go into the replay to do it. It can be in the moment. Oh, this is a cool setting. The sun is setting, and I have a few cars behind me, and the light is glinting off of their windshields, and their headlights are just coming up. I really want to capture this moment. But alas, you cannot enter a photo mode in the pause menu, which is really annoying now because I love taking photos. Gran Turismo Sport has really gotten me into taking photos in games, and especially in the game itself. So if photos are such a huge part of the game with the scapes, which is about 1/6 of the entire game, probably a half of the entire gameplay, why not have a photo mode inside of the menu? Just have it immediate. There you go. You can take a photo in the middle of a race. But anyway, it's not the biggest deal, but it's something that would be very much appreciated. Okay, I've debated whether or not to put this set of improvements in the same video as visuals, but I think I can do that. This has to do with the controls of the game. Not accelerate or brake. I'm talking about looking around. Because with a controller, it's really, really annoying. This is the most annoying part, probably, of the entire game, is the fact that whenever I want to look around in the car, it's a little special, because if you try and look down too much, it doesn't just stop the camera, it moves you to the rear view. You can't change that. I want to change it, because I'm used to Project Cars and Project Cars 2, where I look down, and I try and look down as far as possible, and I just see my pants. I see my feet and the bottom of the steering wheel, and that's it. Or I look up, and I just see the roof. And then whenever I let go, it doesn't follow, the camera does not follow the stick. It follows a gradual centering. So the first point is more camera look freedom. And that would be so nice, being able to look slightly backwards, slightly, and then there would be the full rear view. This is in first person, mind you. So that is the first point. The second point is, please make it so that whenever my camera is centered, or is trying to center itself, it doesn't give me a seizure. Because whenever I try and recenter the camera, or not whenever I'm trying to, whenever I let go of the stick, it just whiplashes me to that. It follows the stick, one for one. It doesn't dampen the sensation at all. It's just one for one. Where the stick moves, the camera moves. Where you can do something like on Project Cars, where if the stick goes back to center, it understands you're wanting to go back to the center of the screen. You're not trying to go the speed of light from the top right corner to the middle. You're not doing that, and it just lets you. It kind of speeds a little bit and then slows down whenever it's getting about to the center. That's very nice. I like that, and it's making me very annoyed that I can't do that in sport, which is why I don't look around as much, because, well, I have to be driving, but also because of this. It gives me a headache every time. Now, the last part of this trilogy, I would say, is we need an orbit camera in Gran Turismo Sport. Now, Polyphony, if you don't know what an orbit camera is, it means that the camera is centered in the center is in the middle of the car. The center of the vehicle is where the camera will be pointing towards, but you can use the right stick just like you'd be moving around in the first-person view. You move around the car, orbiting it as if you were a moon around the Earth, and you'll always be looking to the center, but you can move the camera up and down at angles, and you can turn it all the way around the car. It's a very simple concept, and yet it's so necessary, because I want to see the side profile of my car. This is a reason why I don't like Assetto Corsa. Not hating on the game, but this is a reason why I don't usually play it that often, especially in third person, is because it has a very limited outside view. Now, the only reason why I'm complaining about this is because I know that that Polyphony understands what camera movement is. Because you can move the camera in first person, you can look your head around, but for some reason you can't look around the car in third person. This is my biggest gripe, and something that I've been wanting since the very beginning. The camera it's not too fixed, but I'd like it to be able to move. Because why not? I want to look at my car. I want to look at the things around it. So, please, Polyphony, add this. Add this soon. Because I want to look at my black Ferrari F40, and I want to look at it while I'm racing. I know it doesn't take that much programming skill to do, because, well, let's just face it, the people at Project Cars did it, Slightly Mad, and they haven't exactly had 20 years of development experience. They may have about 6 or 7 years at the time that they made Project Cars 1, and that has an orbit camera. So, please, implement it now. Implement it as soon as possible. Anyway, now we're moving on to my last point. No, second to last point. and it's the ability to have custom color headlights and taillights. If I want to make my taillights green and my headlights orange, please let me do that. Because I know you have the yellow headlights already, so let me black out my taillights, not for racing, for competitive racing, but definitely for single player. I would love to have that because even though it's not my favorite thing in the world to have blacked out taillights, I know a lot of people do. So that would be very nice, very subtle, just RGB manipulation. It's not really that hard. Now the final point is HUD layout customization. I want to have the track camera as well as my radar on the same screen, and I don't want it along with my position. There are some times whenever I just want the track view, or not the track view, but where I am on the track. I just want that, and I don't want my position. I just want that little piece, or I just want the speedometer. This is the weirdest thing, is that they have a setting for the track and the positioning, where those are its own thing, and they have a setting for display all, where it has those two things and all of the car info, like the tire pressure, the tire wear, they have the fuel consumption, they have the tachometer, they have the G-force, the steering, and even the speed of the car. But they don't have a setting where that's the only thing that you see, and you don't have to look at your track or your position on the grid. Very weird. Like HUD customization. Once again, not really that hard to do. All of my suggestions are things that would be very simple to implement and not very hard in terms of just, say, programming. These are things that could be easily implemented. You could fix these within a week or two, and you wouldn't really be taking anything away from the game or the updates that you're giving to it. Which I do like, by the way. I heard that it's going to be every single month from now on is going to be an update, and that's really awesome. This was a longer episode, mainly because the visuals are so important in this game, and I really wanted to take time to hammer home just how good this game could be. Because I love this game. I love what this game is going for. I think it's amazing that the developers are taking suggestions from the community. I'm very small, but this could get out to more people. And I know that these are things people would love to see. It's not like someone's going to say, oh, we don't want rain in the game. We don't want an orbit camera. We don't want a classic showroom. It's not things that people will not want. It will just be things that people will be glad to have, and glad that they could just explore more of the game. Because the thing that was great about Gran Turismo 4 was that it was very deep. Still is. Like I said before, I finished probably about 10% of that game, and I still spent half my childhood playing it. So, I also booted up Hot Wheels Stunt Track Challenge earlier today. I went through the entire game within 3 hours. That's not GT4. GT4, you have to spend hours and hours and hours and days and weeks and months and probably even years to complete the game. So, that's what I loved about that game. That's what I think they're going for in this game, and I really think that the visuals are going to make this game what it could be, especially on the Pro, because I'm getting one. I want it to look very good. So anyway, those are my thoughts on visual implementations that could be put into Gran Turismo Sport by the developers. These aren't things that are very complicated or hard to implement into a game, but they are things that would be very much appreciated and in some cases are very needed. Anyway, until next time, thank you for watching.